all you feminards out there. This is Beckah.
And this is Leigh.
And we have another exciting episode of File 741 for you today. We are going to be doing an interview with two collaborators, Nadja Baer and Nathan Lueth, and they are here to talk about their work with us.
All right.
Woo. Hi, my name is Nathan Lueth. I'm a freelance comic artist and illustrator, and occasionally rambling caricature man.
I'm Nadja Baer. I am a lawyer in my day job, so I write lots of software contracts. And then more interestingly, I have written graphic novels and comic books and urban fantasy novels.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you taking the time.
We appreciate you having us.
Of course.
Well, we'll get right into it. So first, could you tell us about Impure Blood?
Impure Blood is a steam fantasy epic graphic novel. We launched it originally in late 2009. It was part of DC's Zuda talent search, where they were looking for webcomic artists. Didn't win, but we decided to continue on with it anyway, and we wrapped production at 400 pages in late 2017.
Wow.
Right. Yes, and it is the story of a half-human gladiator who's sprung from captivity by a mysterious young lady. He soon finds himself drawn into a race against a monstrous army for an artifact that seems to have connections to his ancient mystical bloodline.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
Right.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy the story.
Yes, me too.
I'll take that one.
Yeah. We get a lot of good compliments on the story, and I'll vouch for that. Pretty good. Not that I'm biased.
Well, I'll go on to the next question. So, what is it like collaborating with your spouse on Impure Blood? What are the benefits and challenges to working together?
You want to go first on that one?
I think the benefits are that, we're usually located in the same place, so it's really easy to get some face-to-face interaction to ask questions. You don't have to rely on, distance or, missing somebody's tone in text or email, which is nice. The challenges, I think, are that you assume that you know the other person really well, and you assume that you know what they mean and what they might think is funny.
Right.
And that's not always the case.
Yeah. It's a relationship like any other. You have to get your communication right. And like Nadja just said, if you're on the same page 90% of the time, you're going to be way off that last 10% of the time, and it's going to be that much worse because you assume you know what the other person is thinking about, but...
and then you take it a little personally.
But then you take it a little personally, right? And I suppose, to the second half of that question, some of the pitfalls are if, you're fighting about something else, it's very easy to bleed over into the work, the collaborative work.
That's why there's so many fight scenes.
That's right.
Yeah, I would imagine it would be hard to give something up, more so when you have to live with that person.
True.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you're really not going to pick that many hills to die on.
Right, and that also. It does crystallize your priorities a bit.
That's good. So what process did you use to create the comic? Did you do the writing first and then the illustration? Did you work on it page by page together?
No, I worked on that story. I was originally writing it as an epic fantasy novel series for years and years and years, way before I met Nathan. When we met, I forget which one of us stumbled upon the Zuda competition.
That was you, probably. Yeah.
I'll take credit. That's okay.
You can have it.
We found the Zuda competition, and I suggested to Nathan that he should enter something. He didn't have any stories ready to go, and I said, well, I've got this one story we can use. But it just took off from there, I guess.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so as far as nuts and bolts, Nadja sent me a page, not necessarily a panel breakdown. If your listeners are familiar with the Marvel method, it was
a little looser.
Yeah, a little more tender than the Marvel method. But yeah, it was mostly like a list of the dialogue and the actions to happen on any given page, but not necessarily with any kind of panel breakdown. And then I would take that and do sketches, based off of a sketch page based off of that. And initially, I think I sent Nadja the sketch pages. It was kind of like, "Is this what you're thinking about?"
Sometimes you over your shoulder.
Yeah. Sometimes I had to or look over her shoulder and stuff like that. That dropped off pretty quick. But
and I usually stayed 20 pages plus ahead of him, so
right.
It wasn't
for the most part.
For the most part, there were a few times where I think you almost caught up and you had to pester me some more.
Yeah, but that was few and far between. So it was interesting though, because a lot of the time I was discovering what was going to happen on the next page, along with the audience. Yeah, along with when I got the next page. So.
Nice.
Get me going. Get me on the edge of my seat.
So aside from Impure... Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I have a really important question before we move on from Impure Blood. Is there a cameo from the Cabbage Seller?
Yeah, everybody loves that one. Yeah, yes. Okay. That is my homage. I love it, like in Foxtrot or whatever else, where the artist just puts little in-jokes, tidbits, references in the background. It makes it that much more fun to.
Yes, that was not art.
Yeah, no, that was definitely not script. That was one of my little add-ons. Which let's see, I tried to keep the add-ons to a minimum, or at least run past it. But we were actually just talking about this earlier this evening. Apparently, I got away with more than I thought I did.
Yes, yeah. Well, I have a Last Airbender tattoo, so I'm sure there are more references that I've missed, but that one was a good one.
Of course, thank you very much.
Thank you, Leigh.
No problem.
That is the one that gets the most attention.
Aside from Impure Blood, what other projects have you both collaborated on together or want to collaborate on together in the future?
See, we both contracted for I don't know what you want to call them, a vanity press, a company that hires out talent for people that have a book that they want to put together and don't, necessarily have the time or the skill to do it themselves. So people that want to do the whole self-publishing thing, but don't necessarily have the time or the interest to learn all that, but they have the money to throw at somebody for that. So we both contracted for this company called Roundtable Companies, and we worked on a few things together. We worked on a collection of books about kids growing up with learning disabilities. We worked on a graphic novel adaptation of the U.S. Constitution, a few autobiographical comics,
translations of we did it's that marketing book.
Yes, the one you're most proud of, Influence by Robert Cialdini. Yes, that was a very good script. Nadja's proud of it to this day. I also agree that it is quite good. People in the business world should know, and business marketing world should know the name Robert Cialdini. So we made his graphic novel for him.
That's great.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Actually, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about one of the comics that you had made. I was so impressed with Incredible Adam. As an elementary art teacher who works with a lot of autistic students, this was probably the most accurate depiction of a child's experience living with autism that I've read. And I had originally bought the digital version, and as soon as I read it, I immediately bought the book version to keep in my classroom as a resource.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, no, it's really, really, really good, and it's hard to describe a child's experience with autism. It's such a spectrum. So I was going to ask what your experience was, or what research did you do to create that story?
Let's see. That story was actually very closely written by the PhD head of Oconomowoc Residential Programs based in Wisconsin. So all of the details, the stuff that you're appreciating probably came from him. Let's say credit where it's due. I will say that from my end, starting out, I did not have an appreciation for how sensitive some of these topics were and how just right some of it had to be. I remember having to redo or revise quite a few pages because the characters weren't hugging properly, or the teacher character was grabbing Adam in the wrong fashion. and Dr. Pukar would come back and say, no, it can't be like this. It has to be this way. And at the time, I recall thinking, oh, what's the big deal? But apparently, it is a big deal, and that is how I learned quite a bit in the process of creating this book. Incredible Adam.
That's great. Like I said, I was just really impressed with it. One of my favorite parts of it too was that every time Adam got upset or angry, the storm cloud vision that you had on there was really a great visual.
That one I will take credit for. That one was my idea. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great way of visualizing it.
Along the same lines of representation in comics, we are always looking in this podcast to promote comics that are good examples of representation, whether people of color, female characters, LGBT characters, all that sort of thing. So when you're creating a story and creating characters, do you consider those factors of what kind of representation might be important to the story?
Yes. Easy answer. No, I found that when I was writing Impure Blood, I had to, beyond the cast of main characters, I had to consciously tell myself, you also have to put in male characters. And that's something that I do when I write just my fiction novels too, is that generally the characters that come to mind for me are the ones that I like. And, I have to push myself to go outside of, okay, this is who I originally imagined, but what can I do to make it more inclusive or to pull in someone else that maybe wouldn't ordinarily be in a story like this?
And being a D&D player, I just roll the dice. If there's a rando character that did not have a specific gender or race assigned to him, I literally had a die on my desk that I would roll, and okay, that's the color of their skin, and male or female. There you go.
And that was for Impure Blood in particular, that's such a central theme and part of the story is kind of a learning to accept people for who they are, and people learning to accept themselves for who they are and not, their shortcomings. So I think it was important from that standpoint to make sure, I would write in fringe characters or background characters, but they all had, a purpose.
Yeah, we really appreciate that and really enjoy Impure Blood for those reasons as well. I really like the cast and the whole style really is really fun.
Well, thank you very much.
It's always easier to like the flawed characters.
Yeah.
Well, continuing on your process for character development, how do you know when a character looks right or looks wrong?
Let's see. For the main cast, I do recall doing a lot of does this look right? Does this look right? Does this look right? Kind of stuff with Nadja.
And after that, I was like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, and that's how I eventually got total artistic freedom. I bugged the crap out of her. But Nadja really was good about giving me kind of a core concept, aesthetic to work with regarding characters. I mean, Roan, off the bat, I knew had to look alien enough that he was obviously not completely human, but also couldn't be so alien that he was off-putting and scary and unrelatable. Little known fact, he is actually kind of based on an armadillo, which is, kind of half mammal, half reptile. Let's see, other, more alien characters like the villain got to be, since they're further from human, metaphorically speaking, and kind of anti-human, I was able to go a little more over the top with him. But yeah, generally I just tried to keep in mind what the story purpose of the character was and try to make them make the character fit that part or look the part.
Nadja, did you ever have to say absolutely not?
I think so far as character design, I never said absolutely not. In the original, when I first wrote the series, Roan probably looked more like a gargoyle.
I think he had
wings.
Yeah, I think he had wings originally, didn't he? Yeah.
And Nathan lost the wings, and I was mad about that for a while. That they'd be the the butt to draw.
Right. Especially if he wasn't actually going to do any flying.
Right.
Yes.
But I don't know that there were any moments of no.
Flat out no. Right?
But I too took that after we started working together, and I knew that if there was something that was important to me, I would write it in and say, this is why this has to be this way. This is why Mac has to be young and a little bit naive and super excited and that sort of a thing.
Why she eventually wound up looking like the cover of a Swiss Miss package.
So along those same lines, when you work with somebody, whether it's your spouse or somebody else that you're collaborating with, do you know pretty early on, oh yes, I definitely want to work with this person again, or no, I will never ever work with this person again? So how do you kind of maintain or break those relationships if that's where that has to go?
I've had several writing partners over the years that you start out in large groups and you find those one or two people that you click with who always have the suggestions that work for you, that aren't trying to change you or your final product. So I find that it's just a really natural process of you go through one or two small things together and you can tell pretty quickly whether you click with someone. In a more professional, where someone hires you to do something, then it's really just check your ego at the door.
Yes.
Something that's more truly collaborative, like what we did, I think there's still a substantial amount of check your ego at the door. Back up anything that you think is important and let go of anything that really isn't.
And for me, Impure Blood is actually only one of the few true collaborations I've ever actually done. Most of what I've put out there is work for hire, and in which case it's my attitude is kind of, well, it's your project, I'm just working on it. You want to do something stupid with it? That's on you.
It's not like being a lawyer. You just tell people, this is why that's a bad idea.
Yeah.
If you'd like to go ahead and do it anyway, that's fine, but I'll be documenting the email and putting it in my file.
Right. Yeah. I will try, don't get me wrong, I'll try to dissuade somebody from doing something stupid, but if that's really what they want, okay, whatever. I don't actually care about this anyway. But yeah, with Impure Blood, it's, again, like any relationship, it requires negotiation. As Nadja said, it requires checking your ego a little bit and just coming at it with an open mind and trying to come at it with the mindset that this is now both your baby, which I respect Nadja a lot for being willing to do this with me, because it has been her baby for a lot longer than it's been mine.
Have you ever met somebody or seen somebody's work that you have then really wanted to work with that person and reached out and asked?
I can't say that I have. When I was going to a lot of comic conventions with Nathan, before we had children, before I was a lawyer, I had time.
A lifetime ago.
You'd wander through Artist Alley, and I always kind of had a mind toward, I have these 6 or 7 story ideas in my head. I could, you do that window shopping thing. But I can't say that I ever just coincidence ran into somebody that I thought that is the exact right thing for what I'm looking for. But I'm picky.
Right. And as an artist picking a writer, it's a lot harder to find someone,
you're not hanging around just look at the script.
Yeah, exactly. You can't take a glance, sadly. But plenty of people that I would love to work with, not sure any of them would actually want to work with me.
So do you prefer to collaborate or write or draw your own stuff?
Well, no one prefers that I draw anything.
We did an April Fool's joke for the first couple of years. We did it in which we switched roles. Nadja would draw and I would write. The fans asked us to stop doing that.
They didn't, but I'm pretty sure they all thought it.
It's a funny year that way. Let's see. But yeah, I am actually going to attempt to write my own story coming up here in 2020.
Nice.
The next webcomic that I want to try to launch. So hoping that goes well.
Yeah, so along those same lines, what are you guys working on as individuals?
Individually, I am perpetually working on the sequel to the urban fantasy novel that I put out. Oh, was that 2 years ago now? I feel terrible. Oh, it's called Redemption. You have to show your own stuff here.
Yeah, right. Available on Amazon.
And then I've also kind of got a story that I really wish that I had the time to put out right now, because it's a kind of a post-apoc. The premise is that the computer virus and the human virus hit at the same time in the same week, and you decimate the world population in the space of, a month or two. It's got, the corporate conspiracies and walking robots, and it's just really cool.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So if time and money were no object, you didn't have to worry about any of that, what would be your ideal project?
I would finish the ones I'm working on.
Yeah, I was going to say. Also along those lines, the one that I'm trying to launch next year, actually. So there we go.
Perfect.
Yeah, so Nathan, I really, really like your art style. I really like the bold outlines. There's lots of detail, very vivid colors. So how did you work on developing your own personal style?
Didn't listen to people who told him to simplify.
Yeah, pretty. Let's see. I don't make conscious choice. Developing your style is a hard thing because it happens kind of unconsciously as long as you're continue to have an eye for developing a style. The conscious decisions I remember making are along the lines of, I hate doing backgrounds. I need to get good at backgrounds. Now I can't not do a background a lot of the time, or I need to create more hierarchy I need to make the characters pop out more than it was. I need to make the characters pop out more from the background. I know I'll, fade out the background a little bit and create a thicker outline around the characters. And, but that's, very broad strokes. Stuff like faces develop, just you do something for 10,000 hours,
That is understandable.
So I guess the aesthetic that I work in is just kind of what I see in my head.
Okay. What are some of your artistic influences?
Oh Lord, how long you got? Let's see. Artistic influences, Bill Watterson, Calvin and Hobbes was my first love and my first, oh my gosh, I'm reading a comic and it's awesome kind of experience. The Final Fantasy 7 through 10 series was a big influence on me in college. I, of course, watched Dragon Ball Z, Sailor Moon, and the like in late high school. Neon Genesis Evangelion freaking blew my mind. So much stuff. Just kind of everything I've ever absorbed is in there somewhere to some degree.
So did you always want to draw comics then, since you said, you had a lot of influence with like Calvin and Hobbes and stuff like that? Have you really always focused on that, or did you do other types of art as well?
Comics is something that I've kind of circled for most of my life, and then only after college and in probably my late 20s, early 30s, yesterday, actually decided.
After you met me, let's just give me credit for
okay, after I met Nadja smacked me upside the head and said, "Hey, dummy, quit circling the thing that you keep circling and actually do it, dummy." And I was like, I should do that. No, but I like many artists, it took me longer than I cared to focus in. I've always loved comics. For a long time, I thought maybe I'd get into film and movies and do storyboards or character and creature designs for that. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a traveling caricature man, and which is, drawing live caricatures is great practice for faces and inking and learning to draw a variety of faces. I feel like I should have gotten into animation just for, as a skill set, but never really did. I'm trying to think of what else, but no, it's like I said, I've kept circling back to comics for all my life, and so have I always focused on comics? No. Has comics always been a part of my life? Yes. So it's kind of, I guess, a childhood sweetheart that I've finally settled into being like, yeah, you know what? Maybe she is the one.
Does Nadja know this?
Yeah.
She is fully aware.
Well, I completely understand your love for comics.
Right. Oh, thank you.
So, touching upon your drawing style, do you sketch by hand or digitally? The Art of Losing Kind gives kind of a sense of your process, but could you elaborate a bit?
It is almost entirely digital. Wacom Cintiq, Photoshop, my weapons of choice. And yeah, I've recently started trying to get into more painterly backgrounds, which I feel really pumps up the animated quality of my work. But yeah, otherwise my process is pretty standard comic process. Place the word balloons, kind of compose your page, compose the panels.
Complain to the writer.
Complain to the writer.
Word balloons there.
You gave me a book to put on this one page. Ink it, color it, or rather, for Impure Blood, I sent it to our flattist, Samantha Summers. She sent me back flat colors, and then I would add shading in the highlights and any special effects that I thought needed to be added in, and there you go.
Oh, okay. So, I've noticed that you've been a colorist on other comics, for instance, Flesh of White.
Yes.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that? And then I had a question about you being a colorist.
I can't tell you a whole lot about what the story of Flesh of White is, although you should totally check it out. It's from Inverse Press, and it's available on Comixology and Amazon, etc. now. I was actually more of a finisher on that one, which similar situation. I got the flat colors from the publisher and added the shadows and highlights and any special effects, and just kind of made it pop. added that extra little Shazam to it.
So when you say you got the flat colors, that means that the drawing is made, it's colored in, but it doesn't have any 3D to it.
Correct.
Okay.
So when you're 4 years old and you have a coloring book.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. That's interesting. I didn't know that that's kind of how that was done.
In some cases, it's nice. It saves you some time. With Impure Blood, it was great because it saved me about 4 hours every week, and that's
He has such details in the background.
yeah. And that's also kind of why I'm trying to get more into painting the backgrounds. Is I think it moves a little bit quicker. But yeah, that is I believe that most books will either have a colorist, which does the full schmagegi, flat colors and highlights, lowlights, etc. And then some books more in your, bigger companies, say Marvel, DC, you have a flattist who, as you mentioned, just lays out flat colors, and then a finisher who adds everything after that.
So I had a question for you, Nadja. It sounds like you lean more toward like sci-fi, steampunk sort of stories. So what are your influences? Why that particular genre?
The steampunk, I think Nathan might have actually pulled in.
I'm trying to remember how that conversation went. I think it was more of we were just kind of becoming aware of the steampunk movement way back in the far-flung year of 2008 and 9. So I guess my suggestion was, we'd seen Lord of the Rings, European medieval fantasy was
all over the
freaking place,
something different.
Yeah. And we wanted to give it a different look.
Yeah, but in general, I come from a very left brain, right brain mentality, and have been in IT support roles and work with software geeks on a daily basis. And it's just kind of the intersection of the hard and the soft is something that, is part of my daily life. And I think that really runs over and bleeds into everything that I write.
Okay, that's really interesting. Yeah, I am a writer. I'm not an artist, and I write mostly sci-fi, and I have some stories that I'd be interested in transferring into a graphic novel or comic form, but I feel like it'd be really hard for me to give up some of the things that I wrote.
Right.
It is very difficult.
Yeah, you definitely got a visual medium. You got to show, don't tell.
Yeah. So Nadja, are there any sort of other comic or graphic novel visions that you have for your work, or do you, like you said, you're going to start either the sequel to your book, but is that kind of you're sticking with prose?
I'm sticking with prose for now. I honestly don't think that I would collaborate with someone other than Nathan. All right, we'll pretend that was for sweet reasons. But it's more for the, I think my way, 5-10 years ahead, and what's happening with the royalties and who's keeping track of what and that kind of nonsense. And you really have to want to commit to that sort of an ongoing business relationship, I think, if you want to do a true collaboration, if you don't just want to buy out somebody or pay somebody to execute for you.
Work for hire.
I'm an intellectual property lawyer, so I'm going to explain some of that. So, yeah, I think I'm going to stick with prose, mostly because, like you said, it's really hard time giving up the words that I write. Like Nathan said, he develops his style by, putting what he sees in his head on the paper. That's very much the way that I write, is I see things in my head and then I try to capture that. So I also have a really hard time not putting in all that atmosphere when I'm writing. To do just a bare bones script with dialogue and just general directions sometimes would take me longer than writing a page of prose.
Interesting that you mentioned that. I know it's like a time constraint kind of thing, but I actually often found myself wanting more descriptive stuff from you in Impure Blood.
Yeah, but I knew all that stuff wasn't going to make it, so...
Yeah, not everything, but if you're looking for pointers for your graphic novel, a comic artist you might hire, I recently read Words for Pictures by Brian Michael Bendis, and one of the things that he said is, as a comic book writer, you're not writing for the audience, you're writing for the artist. You're writing to inspire the artist. So maybe not florid prose necessarily, but, a little bit of visual inspiration, a little bit of flavor, a little, help the guy populate the world a little bit. I think it's a good idea.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll see if I can get there. Leigh and I have been wanting to collaborate someday, but we have
scared as hell.
Yeah, well, and Leigh has had some stuff published now, so now I'm behind, and so there's all this pressure. So, so was there anything else you wanted to share about the projects you're working on, where we can find your stuff?
Let's see. You can find my stuff on nathanluethillustration.com, and Impure Blood. The entirety of Impure Blood will be up and free to read for another 5 months until the 6th of February 2020. That's 2/2/2020, kids. At which point we will be launching the 400+ page Impure Blood omnibus on Kickstarter. So,
all right.
Mark your calendars, join the mailing list. We hope we can count on your support.
Awesome.
Okay.
And Nadja, you'll be writing the sequel to Redemption?
Yes, I will be. Future tense. That one's probably also hovering at about 60% done. That and antivirus. I don't maintain my own website. My book right now is just on Amazon. And we'll see if I put more on top of that if and when I actually have a sequel.
I've seen the covers for the next ones. They look pretty cool.
Well, we'll make sure to put links in the information of the podcast episode about where to find all that stuff. But thank you guys so much for taking the time to talk with us. It was really interesting. I love hearing about people's processes and collaborations, and it's unusual to talk to a spousal partnered group. So thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah, it's been very enlightening.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
So this has been another exciting episode of File 741. I'm Leigh.
And I'm Beckah.
And thank you for listening. You can listen to us on iTunes, on Podbean, and YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. See you next time.